Imagine a quiet farm girl, her cheeks stinging from the cruel slaps of heartless bullies, standing alone in a dusty field until in a single breathtaking second, she unleashes a hidden power that sends her tormentors crashing to the ground. This isn't just a story of revenge, it's a roller coaster of raw emotion, shocking twists, and a fierce fight for justice that will leave you speechless. Dive into Bullies. Slap farm girl's cheek. 1 second later, they hit the ground hard. A tale that will grip your heart and soul. Subscribe now to our storytelling community for more electrifying narratives like this. Don't miss a single pulse-pounding moment. The sun hung low over the rolling fields of Willow Creek, Nebraska, casting a golden glow across the endless rows of corn that swayed like a restless sea. Clara Mayhew, 16 years old and wary as a fence post, knelt in the dirt, her calloused hands pulling weeds from the base of her family's struggling crops. Her auburn hair, tied back in a loose braid, was stray with dust, and her faded denim overalls bore the stains of a life spent toiling under the unforgiving sun. Clara was no stranger to hard work. The Mayhew farm, a modest 40-acre plot, was all her family had left after her father's passing 3 years prior. Her mother, Ellen, worked double shifts at the diner in town, leaving Clara to tend the fields and care for her younger brother, Tommy, who was barely 10 and small for his age. Life wasn't easy, but Clara had learned to carry the weight of it with a quiet strength that belied her slight frame. Willow Creek High School, however, was a different kind of battlefield. The school, a squat brick building on the edge of town, was where Clara's resilience was tested daily, not by the work, but by the people. The town was small, and its social hierarchy was rigid. At the top sat the Golden Circle, a clique of wealthy kids led by Brittany Caldwell, a 17-year-old with platinum blonde hair, a sharp tongue, and a family name that owned half the county. Brittany and her P.S. Jake, a hulking football star with a cruel streak. Leela, her sneering best friend. And Ethan, a sly charmer who hid his malice behind a disarming smile, ruled the school with an iron grip. Clara, with her patched clothes and farm dirt hands, was an easy target. They called her Muck Girl, mocked her for smelling like hay, and tripped her in the hallways when teachers weren't looking. Clara endured it all with a clenched jaw, her green eyes burning with a fire she kept carefully banked. She wasn't one for confrontation. Not yet. It was a humid September afternoon when the trouble began. Clara was walking home along the dirt path that cut through the old Miller field, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her thoughts on the chores waiting at home. Tommy had stayed late for a science club meeting, so she was alone. The crunch of gravel under her boots the only sound. She didn't notice the sleek black SUV idling at the crossroads until it was too late. Brittany stepped out first, her designer jeans and glossy boots a stark contrast to the dusty surroundings. Jake, Leela, and Ethan followed, their laughter sharp and predatory. "Well, look who it is," Brittany drawled, her voice dripping with venom. "Muck Girl, all alone. Where's your little runt brother to hide behind?" Clara's stomach tightened, but she kept walking, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She'd learned long ago that responding only made it worse. But Brittany wasn't in the mood to be ignored. She stepped into Clara's path, forcing her to stop. "I'm talking to you, farm rat," she snapped, her manicured hand darting out to shove Clara's shoulder. Clara stumbled, but caught herself, her fists clenching at her sides. "Leave me alone, Brittany," she said quietly, her voice steady but low. The others laughed, circling her like vultures. "Oh, she speaks," Lila mocked, tossing her hair. Jake cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Maybe she needs a lesson in respect." Before Clara could react, Brittany's hand lashed out, slapping her hard across the cheek. The sting was sharp, a hot bloom of pain that made Clara's eyes water. She staggered, her hand flying to her face, where a red mark was already forming. The group laughed louder, their voices a cruel chorus. That's for thinking you belong here, Brittany spat, raising her hand again. But something in Clara snapped. Her vision sharpened. The world slowing as a strange heat surged through her veins. It wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, something primal, like a long, dormant ember flaring to life. Before Brittany's hand could strike again, Clara's arm shot up, catching the wrist mid-air with a grip like iron. The group froze, their laughter dying. Clara's eyes, usually soft and guarded, now blazed with an intensity that made Brittany flinch. In one fluid motion, Clara twisted Brittany's arm and shoved her back, sending her sprawling into the dirt. Jake lunged forward, roaring, but Clara sidestepped with unnatural speed, her foot hooking his ankle. He hit the ground hard, a cloud of dust rising around him. Leela screamed, rushing at Clara, but a single forceful push sent her stumbling into Ethan, who caught her, but stared at Clara in shock. In less than a second, the golden circle was on the ground, dazed and humiliated, while Clara stood over them, breathing hard, her cheeks still stinging, but her heart pounding with a strange, exhilarating power. Word of the incident spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. By the next morning, the school was buzzing with whispers. Some said Clara had gone feral, others that she'd been hiding some kind of martial arts training. Brittany and her crew, bruised and furious, spun a story about Clara attacking them unprovoked. But the truth was hard to hide when half the town had seen the welts on Jake's ego and the dirt on Brittany's designer jeans. Clara, for her part, said nothing. She went to school, tended the farm, and kept her head down, but inside she was reeling. What had happened in that field? The strength, the speed, it wasn't just adrenaline. It felt like something had awakened in her, something she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. At home, Tommy noticed the change in her. "You okay, Clara?" he asked one evening, his big blue eyes wide with concern. She ruffled his hair, forcing a smile. "Just tired, kiddo," she lied. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling of her bedroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming, something that would change everything. The days that followed were tense. Brittany and her crew kept their distance, but their glares were venomous, and Clara knew they were plotting revenge. She tried to focus on her routine, school, farm, Tommy, but the memory of that moment in the field haunted her. She'd always been strong for a girl her size. Years of hauling hay bales and wrestling stubborn goats had seen to that. But this was different. It was as if her body had moved on instinct, guided by a force she didn't control. She started testing herself in secret, lifting heavier loads than usual, running faster through the fields, even practicing quick movements in the barn late at night. Each time she felt that same heat in her veins, that same surge of power. It scared her as much as it thrilled her. Clara's only refuge was the farm itself, a place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of the work. One Saturday morning, while digging in the far corner of the north field to repair a broken irrigation pipe, she found something strange. Her shovel hit metal, a dull clang that echoed in the quiet morning. Frowning, she dug deeper, uncovering a small rusted box buried beneath the roots of an old oak tree. It was heavy, its surface etched with strange symbols that looked like nothing she'd ever seen. Not English, not even the Latin from her biology textbook. The box was locked, but the hinges were so corroded that a sharp tug with her crowbar popped it open. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but intact, and a small smooth stone that pulsed faintly with a greenish glow. Clara's breath caught. The stone felt warm in her hand, and when she touched it, that familiar heat surged through her, stronger than ever. She stuffed the journal and stone into her backpack, her heart racing. This wasn't just a find. It was a secret, one tied to whatever had happened in the field. That night, after Tommy was asleep and her mother was at the diner, Clara sat at the kitchen table, the journal opened before her. The handwriting was her grandfather's, a man she barely Remembered, who died when she was 5. His name, Amos Mayhew, was scrolled on the first page along with a date, 1963. The journal was a mix of farm records and something far stranger, notes about the gift, a power Amos claimed ran in the Mayhew bloodline. He described moments of unnatural strength, speed, and instincts that had saved his life during a storm in '58 and a bar fight in '62. He wrote of the stone, calling it a conduit that amplified the gift and warned that it came with a cost. The more it was used, the harder it was to control. The final entry was chilling. They're watching. The circle knows I buried it to keep Clara safe. Clara's hands trembled as she read her own name. Who was the circle? And why had her grandfather hidden this from her? The next day, Clara couldn't focus. At school, she caught Brittany whispering to Jake in the cafeteria, their eyes darting to her. She overheard snippets of their plan, something about humiliating her at the upcoming harvest festival where the whole town would be watching. Clara's grip tightened on her tray. She wasn't just fighting bullies anymore. She was unraveling a mystery that felt bigger than Willow Creek. That evening, she took the stone to the barn, holding it tightly as she tested its power. She lifted a 200-pound hay bale with one hand, tossed it across the barn, and caught it without breaking a sweat. The stone pulsed brighter, and she felt invincible, but also unsteady like the power was a wild horse she could barely rein in. She hid the stone and journal in a loose floorboard, vowing to keep them secret until she understood more. But secrets don't stay buried in small towns. Ethan, the quietest of Brittany's crew, had been watching Clara more closely since the incident. He'd seen her slip into the barn late at night, noticed the way she moved with a new confidence. Ethan was smarter than the others, and his family had deep roots in Willow Creek, roots that whispered of old grudges and older secrets. His grandfather, a retired sheriff, had once told him stories of the Mayhews, of strange happenings on their farm, of a curse that made them dangerous. Ethan didn't believe in curses, but he believed in leverage. He started tailing Clara, noting her late-night barn visits, her sudden strength. He didn't tell Brittany yet. He wanted proof first. But as he watched, he began to suspect that Clara was more than just a farm girl, and that whatever she'd found was something his family had been searching for since before he was born.